So here we are for Mr. President. I'm so annoyed by BGG. Like, this is almost the same game as the original, but it gets its own entry. I don't care about, there's been this argument that went for a long time. How come Monopoly gets like 65,000 entries? There are some games that are significantly different, but this is really just a slight, a minor change overall. It actually, I think, covers the same years, the 2001 to 2020. There's just, some modifications that were done in the ensuing couple of years. And I don't know. Anyway, it does make it easier for me to record things. So this is going to be the tedious part. We're going to go through the turn sequence flip book, and we'll look up things as we go. Playthrough is going to be not too different from this. So it shows me the turn sequence. I've got that up here. Anatomy of a turn. There are going to be two activation segments in each activation phase. These are the activation phases. I guess these are the sequences. I don't know. I'm not really sure why that's considered different. They're similar to each other, so there is that. See what else it has here. Yeah, I mean, basically you just follow this thing up. Okay. And then it spells this out. It's not too big a deal, but this is a big deal. Any die roll with a on the presidential, domestic, diplomatic, and military master action player aids can be re-rolled once at a cost of 1 AP, but you can only do it the one time. This explains the positioning. All right. First thing you're going to do is you determine how many APs you start the year with. They don't roll over between years. I have to keep things in mind because the 4 activations feels like 4 years, but no, the 4 years are over here. So there's, many, many more activations. You get the APs. So you start with a base of 20 in the easier game or 15. Depending on the game you're playing. And then later years, you get less. And that makes sense because presidents, when they're first elected, usually have sort of a nice window where they can get more done. What's a little weird is they can get more done domestically. On the world stage, I don't know if they can truly be more active. It's going to probably balance out, but it feels more like the action points on the domestic structure, I don't know, should cost more in later years or something because you have less capital for them. I'm not sure. That sort of first 100 days thing. From the cabinet effectiveness track, you get additional APs. And we see here, I've got 3 more. So now I'm at, we said 20 to begin with. I'm at 23. This is a little annoying. We've got these plus chits instead of timeses. I am going to need to find my AP chits. I don't know where they are. There's the plus 20. So now I'm at 23. I'll keep this one kicking around down here. Rather than putting things back all the time, it just makes more sense. I get 4 more with an efficient presidential attribute. I do not have that. I get 3 if I lose 3 if I'm disorganized, and I get 2 extra if I have an awesome chief of staff. My bonus does not give me anything there. The first lady. Place the AP on the appropriate track. That's going to be how many points I have over the course of the entire year to spend. Apply any effects other than APs gained from presidential attributes or exceptional White House resources. I feel like I'm playing at this point. We shouldn't be doing that. This is at the start of each turn, so we'd be getting those bonuses. Okay, fair enough. We're not going to do anything there. Key cabinet member experience, you ignore that on the first turn, but after that, you get to pick one cabinet member, make a die roll, and maybe they'll flip to veteran side. You're allowed, not on turn 1, to can one of your cabinet members, and this follows the procedure in Master Action number 7. Which would normally cost you an action to do. I think everything costs you an action. This one costs you an action and perhaps an action point if you want a modifier. And then you terminate them. You get a possible public approval difference. You draw 3 new candidates, and then you actually get to roll on the cabinet improvement table. And we flipped that. Okay. Then, and now note that this gave you a possible cabinet approval. It says it does not cost an action to do here. Roll on cabinet improvement table and apply results. Note you may also have to roll on the cabinet drama table. Again, not on turn 1. Set focus regions for national intelligence collection. You may have 1 or 2 focused national intelligence counters this turn. You check your strategic capabilities for space warfare and strategic recon intel. If both of these are greater than or equal to both of China and Russia on these tracks, you get 2 focused national intel. Now, I think space starts out always, space starts out with China in the lead, so you're only going to get 1 intel marker at the beginning of this, at the beginning of the game, but you might get more. And then you can place those counters on a world region of your choice. What does that do? We don't know. We could go look that up. 41 of the GM. This is really how things are going to be done throughout the game, is read through this, hit something, and then look to see, hey, what do I care? So what does the focus do for me? During Intel Ops, it'll give me a favorable die modifier. During activation phases, I'll have an opportunity to perform focused national intelligence, which is off a table. And also if I have superstars on the NSC, I get some additional bonuses. We're going to find most of the game works this way, where base concepts are going to dig in deeper here or in charts or whatever, and it just doesn't feel like I want to go through everything while I deal with the rules. We're going to see that when we get to the back of the rules, things get kind of painful. We'll talk about that when we get there. Okay, and then the 7th thing, and these are all following down here, right? Aren't they? No, this is begin turn. This is 1 space on the board that's doing all this. But not on turn 1. You get a New Year's surprise. That's going to be a random cascading event from back there. These are the ones that aren't actually dropped in. Oh, I'm sorry. No. From the 3 deck. So if something was in the 3 deck, it would get triggered and resolve it. Then draw a random cascading event from the 2 deck and move it and resolve it from 2 deck. And If either of these are empty, draw a new cascading event for each empty deck from the unused cascading events deck and resolve it as a new cascading event. So even if you clear up your cascading events somehow, you're going to generate more every year. Now, as an optional rule, a new player using the easier level, this is, I think, the first time you play, basically, and we're going to use this, may use a -1 DRM on all rolls bearing this marker on the presidential, domestic, diplomatic, and military master action player aids. This is an additional to any normal DRMs. We'll keep an eye out for that. Place your current U.S. action counter down on State of the Union. We go down one. You'll see there's a whole list of things listed here. That is this whole sequence. It's shorthanded there. As you complete each segment in the activation column, move your counter down to the next segment in order. Yeah, that's simple. Okay, State of the Union. We don't do this on the first turn of the game. However, every other turn, you will make your State of the Union address, roll on the State of the Union chart, which is this, I guess, to determine benefits and penalties from your speech. You choose the column, which is the sum of 4 ratings. Current public approval, die roll modifier. Where's public approval? Here's public approval. Okay. It's this number up here on the top left. So at the beginning, we'd be looking at a 4. Again, you know my grumpiness about that, but relations with Congress. It's going to be over here. It's the actual value. So now I'd be at 9. Media relations puts me to a 14. And current presidential prestige, so that puts me at a 20, which is not in a great place. Of course, I'm not going to do this on the first turn. Then I roll, I guess, a 10-sided die with a bonus if I'm an orator, and we get a set of different things, which may be, allow me to put a bill in or whatever. What could it do at the bad end? Well, give me an opponent. That's kind of the worst thing. Relations with Congress go down. Okay. The next thing is the state of the economy impact. Again, it says not on turn 1, so we'd skip this, but I'm allowed to calculate out how much economic assistance I have and place those by either improving an allied relationship by 1 level, or place a trending pro-U.S. in one of the 8 world regions. Whenever it says place a trending in one direction or another, what that means is if there's no trending there, I put one there in that direction. If there is one of the opposite direction, I remove it. If there's one of the current direction, it moves the thing up a chart and gets rid of the trending. It doesn't put the trending in the negative direction in place. So there's not half levels everywhere. It's kind of weird, and I don't know quite how to visualize or express this. But yeah. Okay. The next one is improve strategic capabilities. If the U.S. state of the economy is 5 or higher, you roll for 2 different capabilities. If it's 4 or less, you only roll for 1. Also, if there's DARPA or rapid capability counters on the strategic capabilities track, you get an extra roll for the track that counter is on. For each capability you choose to improve, and for any DARPA and RC, you roll a d10. You add the SecDef's military rating. Actually, you subtract it if it's not a DARPA roll. On a 1 through 5 or a 1 through 7 for DARPA checks, you improve the capability by 1 box. Otherwise, there's no improvement, and the DARPA rapid capabilities get removed, whether or not they succeeded. Then it tells you, and this is kind of funny. It tells me to move the counter forward here from the State of the Union. It doesn't tell me from the begin turn. It doesn't tell me from the SOE impact. Strategic capabilities is kind of part of it, I guess. This is weird. Like, I'm having trouble assessing, the imagery. It looks like these are different spaces, but these are kind of just segmented because this is what's under here. Gotcha. Okay. Set the POTUS cabinet focus. Place or remove any or all of the 6 cabinet focus counters to reflect your new domestic focus priorities for the year. If there's any tension counters in the cabinet focus area, you remove one. Okay. And then if there are any remaining tension counters, place them all next to your focus priority counters. Starting with priority 6, 5, 4 until there are no more tension counters in play. This feels weird and I don't understand it. And this is unfortunately this whole thing here. Where do the tension markers go? Like, I get where they go when I place them here, but there's tension markers that are left. If there are any remaining, I think they get shoved down towards lesser focuses. I don't know how they appear there. At any time you place new scandal marker on the scandal track, move the scandal marker right 1 box on the scandal track, place 1 tension marker on the POTUS cab focus. Okay. So that's interesting because I just placed a scandal here. What does this say? You're being investigated. Place a new POTUS scandal in the breaking scandal, -2 public approval, -1. You know what it doesn't say? It doesn't say to put a tension in here. And that's weird. It doesn't say not to. But we've got this note here. Anytime you place a new scandal on the scandal track, I think I get attentions there. We'll just drop that there. It gets placed later because a new scandal occurred. I'm sure it's not that big a deal, either way, but I feel like something that happens that seldomly should have triggered it. Now, does it say here? For each scandal in this box at the start of a scandal, investigators know. For new scandals, find target of investigation, then place the scandal marker, roll a d6. So what's really interesting is nowhere in here is it telling me to put that tension marker in. The only place it's telling me is down here, scandal tensions, anytime you place a new scandal marker. That's a really, so far, a very obscure place for that information to be, given that it's not on the card. So, what I'm going to do here is look for scandals. Now, scandals is, I don't know, it's over here in this stuff. Is this domestic arena? Maybe. I'm not seeing it there. Is it presidential? Maybe. I'm not seeing it there. Is it a basic concept? That seems unlikely. So now I look for the index. I'm expecting to find it here. Scandals is page 19. It's not here either. This is not good. This is very bad. The only place where I have this piece of information is right here. That is not a good means of conveying information for something that comes from this card and comes here. It doesn't tell me to put anything here. It doesn't tell me to move anything. Even if I did read this box, I can see this being ignored very easily. I need to blow my nose. A little rest from that. Oh, you know, I figure once we're in this part of the intro, I can start adding personal stuff. One of my favorite bands, well, my favorite band as defined, is going to be in town, actually. It's going to be at the fairgrounds, but there's almost no one left in it. Like, there are 2 members who are left in it from the original, and I'm like, wow. I've never actually seen them in my life. I've seen parts of it after the band kind of split up, and now I'm like, I don't know if I want to go see a bunch of 80-year-old guys, well, a couple of 80-year-old guys playing with what is essentially a tribute band that includes them. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what value there is to that anymore. It saddens me. It saddens me. But at the very least, they'd be playing all their songs. It also happens to be on a Friday, though, which is my dancing night. Okay, let's look at this next one. So this looks like it's part of this set POTUS. Yes, 1 action for POTUS in each cabinet member. Now, this was something that I did not get out of reading everything until I got to here, which is this is when you do your actions. In particular, I didn't realize that each of the cabinet members gets an action. I knew that they get the opportunity to do things, but I thought it was off the same action allotment that the POTUS has. That's the way it's worded in other places. Here, it's very clear. As president, you can perform 1 action from any of the actions described on the 4 master actions player aids. Painful. There's going to be a lot to look at as I try to choose, what I want to do. Or I can remove a tensions counter from anywhere on the game. Or I can remove a tensions counter from anywhere on the game board, including Russia or China. I can also exchange an action for an AP. So I can forego doing something and just get another point. I don't know if that's wise. They tend to, when you trade in actions for APs, you get 1, and when you trade in APs for actions, it costs you 2 APs to do an action usually. Each cabinet member may also, in any order, perform 1 action of the type which they're eligible. VP and Secretary of State, diplomatic, can do diplomatic. VP and Chief of Staff can do domestic. Secretary of Defense can do military. Alternatively, a cabinet member action can be used to remove a tensions counter from anywhere on the game board except China or Russia. So if you have a shitty cabinet member, you could use them. That feels a little weird. I'm not quite sure, I guess the VP could do anything to some extent, but I'm kind of wondering, the Secretary of State being able to affect, I don't know. I mean, right now, all the tension markers are either here or on there, and I don't know if they show up anywhere else. So maybe it's okay. Anyway, just babbling. If the cabinet member has a +1 action on their counter, they can do an additional action anytime during the segment. When the cabinet member has taken their actions, rotate their counter to show this. I don't know how necessary that is. But we'll try. You can take 2 action points to take an additional. You can spend 2 action points to take an additional action of any type before the end of this segment. And then it talks about the presidential briefing. Now, move the counter forward 1 segment on the turn sequence bar. This concludes the U.S. Special Activations portion. Now you start doing the quarterly activations Flip to the next phase. And that'll go from here up to here. Fine. Okay, activation phases 1 and 3 follow more or less the same actions. You'll see the imagery looks about the same. It's not entirely the same. We have a difference here. Russia or China acts in one of them, and the other one acts in the other, which is what these markers are for. And then 2 and 4 are exactly the same, the sequence that you follow. So they don't have to duplicate it by creating a flip book that has, the same pages. They turn you back to this page. Okay, activation, and it talks about that here. Now the next thing, Russia or China actions. If this is activation phase 1, you roll a die, and you randomly determine if it's Russia or China who is going to act. What does that mean? Well, that's going to be WPR1, WPC1. That's these two, the China and Russia book. And we're just going to ignore what they might do until they start doing it. We have a vague idea of the kind of stuff that they're likely to do. They're going to be building up influence and trying to get bases and maybe invading Ukraine or whatever, grab Taiwan. I don't know. But we're not going to worry too much about that. We're going to let the system surprise us with the details of the random charts, etc. And this is basically, you go look at a random chart. The acted marker gets placed here. That lets you know who has to act in the next one. Okay, then you hit any 3 actions. In reaction to the world situation, you may now take a mix of any 3 of your possible actions listed on the master actions chart. Domestic, diplomatic, military, or presidential. This is a POTUS-only segment, so your cabinet members can't take any. You can spend 2 action points to take an additional action of any type before the end of this. Now, this is a one-shot. So you're going to have to kind of pay attention. I'm sitting here with 23 action points. What am I going to use them for? Well, I may not want to spend them right away, but I've got to go through like 5 per activation phase is the way I'm looking at it. So I probably don't want to leave a whole bunch here because those 2 per are going to be needed to some extent. Okay, let's go on. Draw a chit. You draw a crisis chit. Okay. I don't have these in a cup yet, but that's these chits. And they have an indication of stuff that happens. They might cause you to draw crisis cards. They might cause a domestic crisis off an event table. They might cause you to a regional summit off a table. A random regional crisis, which could increase the crisis level in a given area. They could cause the cascading events from either deck 2 or 3 to fire off. What happens if there's nothing there? You get to avoid that shit. So that's kind of cool. And that's true in both of these, unless something says otherwise. And the card, if it's in Crisis 2, it'll move to Crisis 3. If it's in Crisis 3, I think it goes away. Yeah, it goes into the discard pile. Which means it might get shuffled back in. Okay. Good times. That's another table. NSA 2, you get 2 crisis cards from the deck. Choose one and remove it permanently from the game. The other one goes into the reshuffle pile. So you basically kill two events. So that's kind of cool. Russia acts. That's if these are in here. This is a crisis chit that's added when Russia moves to posture 2. Go to the Russia action chart and check Russia's win condition and perform first a couple of cyber attacks and then a D10 for another random action. And similarly, China Acts works the same way. If the crisis chit you just drew had no plus sign on it, this finishes the segment. You move your counter to the one ally rogue group acts segment of the activation phase on the turn sequence track. These are additional things. So if you're allowed to get 3 of these crisis chits, no more than that. If the crisis chit comes with a plus on it, you activate another one. That's what it's trying to say. If it had a plus on it, move your counter down 1 space. Yeah, so you'd jump to here, or you keep drawing crisis chits. But if you've drawn 3 in a row, no matter whether there's a plus on that third one, you still don't do anything. I think the crisis chits just go back in the cup when you're done with them. Those are going to be used a lot. I'll probably have a cup filled with them constantly and use a second cup for other things. Okay, Ally Rogue Group Acts. And again, these are across the board in these. I think these get duplicated in phase 2 and 4. The rules for it. Randomly draw one of the 4 allied chits to determine which group of allies a rogue state activates. It's going to give you a number. Refer to the applicable ally rogue nation action chart and follow the instructions to see what happens. I don't know what the groups mean. We're going to see when we start rolling the events. It is clearly meant to kind of randomize things, but I may know, after the first one happens, I may know something about, oh, look, that one's Central and South America or something along those lines, is that group. Wah, wah, wah. I don't know. All of wah is in, what is wah? Wah is ally and rogue states. Okay. Wah, wah. Right then. Place the ally chit you drew on this activation segment space as a reminder of which group was just activated. I think that's this. Now they act like this is being drawn from a cup. There's no reason for that. These actually say to set them up here. So I feel like there's a little bit of, this makes more sense. Okay. POTUS cabinet focus, that's below the ally rogue group acts as part of the same thing, but in order. I don't know why. They just don't want to have too many spaces for the counter to be on. These are really very different things as I see it. Refer to POTUS cabinet focus section on the game board. That's this here. We already did something with that, didn't we? We set them here. Roll a d6 for each focus or priority, starting with priority 6 and continuing increasing importance. Do not roll for any that has a tension counter next to it, though. These have been shuffled aside for now because of other crises and events. If the result falls within the success range on the priority counter, apply the results in the success effect area to the right. Otherwise, there's no effect. At the end of the activation segment, remove 1 tensions counter. You don't actually worry. These tensions counters have a number on them, I believe. You don't actually worry about that. Now, the tensions counters, I think, are going to have to go into a cup pretty regularly, too. So that's kind of troubling because I may need more here. And here are the bonuses. Relations with Congress improve. The economy improving. Marker gets put on, which could mean that it ends up, if it was on top, it would end up shifting it up. Hearing weird noises. Let me check. Improve Homeland Security. That decreases a terror group in the U.S. by 1 level. If there aren't any, we get to add to Homeland Security, but at a -2 public approval. So that is something you might not want to do once you have the terror groups cleared up. And there are none to begin with in CONUS, certainly at the easiest level. I think the hard level increases, and there would be one there. Improve public relation press, add +3 to public approval, or +1 to public approval and +1 to media relations. Your call, Address a domestic crisis, subtract from domestic crisis. If it's already at 0, you get a couple of action points. That just frees you up to do something else. Seems pretty low priority. Improve cabinet effectiveness. This looks important. You want to get your cabinet to be more effective. That will give you more action points, but it also affects cabinet effectiveness checks. Great. Whatever. Okay. All right, let's talk about tension counters. Anytime the game instructs you to place tension counters on the POTUS cabinet's focus, place them in the tension boxes to the right of each focus area on the game board, beginning with the lowest importance priority order that does not currently have a tension. If all 6 boxes to the right of the focus are full, when you have to place a new tensions counter, you lose an AP, you roll on cabinet drama instead. Probably not something you want to do. Domestic master action number 8 allows you to remove tension counters in the highest importance priority. Also, during the one action for POTUS in each cabinet member, tension marker may be removed instead of taking an action with the POTUS or with a key cabinet member, also in a 1 to 6 priority. Scandal tensions. Here we go. Anytime you place a new... This is not helpful. It's what's repeated here. It's in a useful place, but you really need it on the scandal track. And it's not showing up there. You need a reminder there, I think. Or on cards that generate scandals. Anytime you place a new scandal counter on the scandal track or move one box to the right, place 1 tensions counter on the POTUS cabinet focus. If POTUS is the scandal target, put 2 instead of 1. How about that? That's even worse. Now, these aren't actually assigned yet. They get reshuffled later. But again, I don't think the number on them seems to matter. They just seem to prevent you from your focus. Then the counter moves forward from here down to here. Decrease media relations, perform 2 domestic actions, and perform the legislative segment. Ooh, this is going to be a big thing. I think I'm going to hold here because battery's running down. I can use a break. We're not all that far through the book, but that's okay. And I think we're going to focus just on this for giving an idea of what's happening in the game. This is the one thing that I didn't get to read until last, and nothing else made sense. And it has to do with them not telling me, read this first, not fiddle around and play with the game before you do anything. I didn't want to fiddle around and play with the game. I wanted to understand the rules first. Well, the rules are mostly in here. Sure, the details are here in the GM and in all these tables. A party or something going on at the pavilion back there. Got to remember to go check for food. I didn't check yesterday. I got a bunch of fruit. Most recently, I got a piece of cheesecake and some wood. The wood was a bonus, but the fruit, I got a ton of fruit, like watermelon, different melons, really, and some other stuff, too, strawberries and stuff. That was just thrown out, Okay, so we were here on this combination. Decrease media relations by 1 box. That happens once a year. No, twice a year. Sorry. It does happen on activation phase 3 as well. This is just, you have to work hard to keep your media relations up. Then you get 2 domestic actions from the Master Domestic Action Player Aid. This is POTUS only, so your key cabinet member can't take any actions. Now, I think the cabinet member still gets to modify these, but I'm not positive about that. You can spend 2 extra action points to take additional actions. Again, there's a lot of opportunities to do this, but you don't want to let them go. We'll see if anything else allows you. Like, there's places where you can modify a die roll, and that's a big deal. APs and actions. You can forego 1 or more allowed actions in a friendly action segment to recover an AP each. For example, in this, you could instead perform 1 action and gain an AP, or perform none and gain 2. Generally, I think it's best to perform your actions. It feels like, at least at the beginning of the game, you have a lot of action points. You're not going to use them all. You're going to want to buy new actions with them. But some actions cost action points, I believe. We'll see here, cost 1 action point. So, yeah, there's not like a general rule. You got to be familiar with everything on all the charts. Again, I'm going to get buffeted around. All right, but the next thing in here is the legislative segment. And you can see this is relatively long. First, you determine support or opposition to pending bills. If there's no pending bills, you skip this. Total the sum of the legislative rating of all your friends in the congressional box, then subtract the total ratings of your opponents. Now, right now, we're looking at 5 to 6, so I'd be at -1. If results are above 3 in either direction, that's their limit. If the result is positive, you can move that number of bills, yours or your opponent's, 1 box in either direction on the pending bills box, increasing or decreasing their support in Congress. If the result is negative, you move that number of your bills 1 box towards strong opposition, cannot be passed. The opposition is going to try to stymie your plans. No matter how much, maybe they like them, maybe the public likes them, they don't care. That fits in very much with, like, the past couple of decades. It didn't used to be the case. Attempt to pass pending bills. If no pending bills, skip this step. The number in your current box in the bipartisan cooperation section is the number of bills you must now attempt to pass. If you control both houses of Congress, you can choose which bills you want to try to pass. If your opponent has both, they will only make attempts on opponent's legislation that are furthest left on the pending boxes, i.e. the easiest to pass. Choose randomly if more than one opponent's bill is in the same leftmost box. If control is split, you roll a die to see who gets first, and then you alternate until you've made the number of attempts. Right now, the bipartisan cooperation is high, but and I control Congress, so I would have control over which bills actually get put forward. And that's to indicate that the majority leader and the speaker have a lot of power as to what comes through. Your opponents will never attempt to pass your bills, and if they don't have enough pending bills of their own, they'll skip their opportunity to pass a bill instead. If there are no opponent's bills to pass, when your opponent must pick, they don't select any, but it counts as their attempt. You have no bill of your own to pass. When you must pick one, you have to select an opponent's bill. That feels a little unfair. To attempt to pass a bill, you roll a die and apply the DRM from the pending bill box that it's currently in. That'll be the modifier here. You want negative. On a 1 through 3, it's passed. Then you determine the bill's quality, which is going to be a table in the domestic charts, unless the bill ends up being vetoed. Now, this is interesting. I'm guessing we could take a look at this. D5. That's in here. Is that here? Yeah. doesn't talk about vetoing here. This is a little disturbing because how the veto is handled is kind of complicated. So it says unless the bill ends up being vetoed with no rules indication there and something here. Place it in the past legislation box, adjust the legislative priority, and implement any effects of the bill. If it ends up being vetoed, return it to the unused bill box. Let's see if this tells me anything about vetoing. Because conceivably, I might not want a bill to pass, although I don't know. Unfortunately, it's not there. Bill is not here. This has GM 23 to 24. I'm guessing that's where we're going to see this. Okay. You can introduce by passing those. I don't see anything about veto here. Bills that are passed and signed give rewards in form of certain stuff. Landmark bills give the greatest rewards. I don't see anything about vetoing. Here it has this, but it talks about the same stuff here. Is veto an option that comes in the chart? Is that what's happening here? Because what I was going to say is some bills you couldn't veto. Take a look at like the Epstein release bill. That was clearly they couldn't vote against it, and the president wasn't going to veto it because it wouldn't have mattered anyway. So if we look here, I don't see any indication that allows me to veto a bill. Here we go, hold on. If you roll an adjusted 6 or more, the bill is considered to be so dysfunctional that you veto it as president. Okay, well, there it is. That's if bipartisan cooperation is in the leftmost one box. It could be in the 0 box. If it's in the rightmost cooperation, if it's in the leftmost one box, this is interesting. Like, I don't get a penalty on the bipartisanship if it's there. If you roll a 6 or more, it's considered so dysfunctional that you veto it as president. Return the bill to the unused and skip the rest. Yeah, so I don't have a choice of vetoing stuff. That's a little fucked up. I don't know. An adjusted 6 or more, but here, the quality, this is the quality roll. It has 6s. I don't fucking know what's going on here. When the bill is passed, roll consists on the chart below. I guess that's this. I don't know. There is no chart below. That's this. Die roll, bill quality, legacy points, and benefits you receive. I really don't know. Roll a d6 and consult the chart below. If it's the opponent's bill, you get half the value of legacy rounded down. If you sign an opponent's legislation, you get a penalty in party relations. But again, you don't seem to have a choice of vetoing. And what I was going to say is, if you did have a choice of vetoing, it would feel like you might get a penalty for doing it. It wouldn't just trash the bill. Like, again, there is a cost to vetoing popular bills. I'm a little lost on this, to be honest. I don't know how it looks like the vetoing is out of your hands. Like, it could just fail. Okay, if you pass a landmarks bill, you get a new congressional friend. If it was your bill and your party relations allow a new friend, or an opponent if it was the opponent's legislation. How does something become a landmark bill? I know I've seen that mentioned before. I expected it to be in here. I don't see it there. So we look again. I don't see landmarks, so we'll go back to legislation at 23. It's the only place I can think of. Bills are passed and give public approval action points and sometimes give the landmark bills get the greatest reward. Again, I'm guessing that comes off the fucking charts. These rules are not good. I've talked about, hey, they're good in terms of this decision, but now that I'm starting to collate the two and try to see how they link into each other, I'm not impressed, and I know I'm going to have issues with actually playing. So, we got anything about landmark bill in here? Okay, if you pass a landmark bill only. Yeah, that's a big if. Landmark is not mentioned until we get to here. Landmark bills are moved to the past landmark. You will not be able to introduce them again this game. I don't see landmark listed here. I see a CD7. These are greater initiatives. These are not landmarks. These are something else, although they do possibly create landmarks somehow or another. But how do I get between good bill and landmark bill? I'm not seeing anything about that. 6 or more is so dysfunctional. Like, oh, here we go. A 1 or, yeah. I expected it to be here. Somehow I just didn't see it. If you roll a 1 or less, it becomes a landmark bill. Otherwise, it's a good bill. Okay. Get the feeling you're not given any capability of deciding what you veto and what you don't. And it's not like there's no ideological bent in the game, which means that, if I pass gun legislation, there's no telling whether that's a restriction or some kind of some kind of loosening of gun laws, although God knows how that could happen in this era. This is the era where the court has mostly stepped in and said, yeah, for whatever reason, the machine gun law is okay, but like any further restrictions are just absolutely wrong. And then, it's like, I don't get their consistency. Right? To me, it's kind of keep and bear arms means you can have any weapons you like. Or the government can, at some level or another, determine which arms you want or don't. Like make your decision as to what that law actually, what that piece of the Constitution, what that piece of the Bill of Rights actually means, and whether or not state militia has any impact on it. Right? Well, the well-regulated militia, not state militia, the well-regulated militia clause, whether that has any meaning at all. If you decide it has no meaning and that arms cannot be restricted, well, then I should be able to have family atomics, man. I mean, I'm sure the Bezoses would love them, and the Musks. Okay, anyway. So we find out how the landmark bills happen and how veto happens. It's a bad bill. It's got nothing to do with the president's willingness to pass opponent's legislation or whatever. That feels completely off base to me. We'll see how important that is. It may be enough to dissuade the legislative procedure here, that it's all just a die roll, may be enough to persuade me that I'm really not that interested in the game, to be honest. Like, that feels like a key element to this game. Anyway, if you pass landmark, you get a friend or an opponent. And in the easy game, we use the moderate side always. Roll on the Congressional Maneuvering and Drama table in the domestic charts booklet. Well, we'll see what that does. Then we introduce new bills, remove all bills currently in the cannot be passed box and put them back in unused. These can now be added in. You can now voluntarily remove any of your bills currently in any box of the pending bills section. You can't have more than 5 bills in pending bills section, so you might not want some lower priority or hard to pass bills. The number in the current box in the bipartisan cooperation is the number of bills that are now introduced. If you control both houses, you get to choose which ones you introduce. If your opponents control both, you choose opponents' legislation for the bills that are highest public priorities, and choose random bills if there are none that you can pass that fit the public priorities. This is kind of weird. The opposition is going to pass bills no matter what on topics that you care about. Now, those bills are different. You flip them over to indicate that the opponent suggested the bill. And that means you're going to be ideologically opposed to it. Now, again, there's certain things that I feel like there's always room, something like immigration reform. You could do that in a couple of different ways, right? One which is preferable to one party, one which is the other. The gun bill, I don't know. I really don't know what you could do at this point, as an example. And we're gonna have to see how those play out. I'm not too upset by that side of it. What I am upset about is the idea that I can't veto a bill that I don't like. Now, it would make sense I can't veto a bill I don't like if it had bipartisan support, right? Or if Congress was so controlled that they can override my vetoes on the bills they want or whatever. But that is seldom the case in this period. Anyway. Oh, where are we here? Place the bills in the 0 pending box track if there's a split control of Congress, in the -1 if introduced by the party controlling both houses of Congress. Okay, total the media ratings of all friends and subtract the media ratings of all opponents. Now, at this point, my friends have 3 media and my opponents have 4. My opponents are just better than me. in this setup. I have more friends, but I got kind of screwed. And that's going to affect the public approval, that number of boxes up or down to a maximum of 3, and then media relations will be increased by 1 if you increased your public approval by 3, or decreased by 1 if you decrease it by 3. Scandal investigation. If there's a scandal, you roll a die on each scandal on the scandal track, starting with the concluding scandal box. So yeah, you handle the stuff that's furthest along first. Refer to the scandal table and apply the results. When it tells me to look at a table, I'm not going to look at it now. I'm going to worry about it when it hits. But from what we saw with the landmark bill thing, my difficulty finding that, it's kind of troublesome. Examine all your friends and opponents. If there are more moderates than radicals, move cooperation right. If there's more radicals than moderates, move it left. Perform one immediate action of any type for each of your bills, not opponents, that were passed and signed during the activation segment. That's powerful. That got us this. Now we draw a chit. This, I think, is the same. Whoa, 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 there's no pluses on this one. Hold on, draw one or more crisis cards. There's no card in deck 2. Okay, this is interesting. The second chit here doesn't have these draw agains. It's not calling that out, which I find kind of disturbing. At least I'm not seeing it. And then it's listing all the different types of chits. This is basically the same as the other thing, except there's no chance of additional draws. Focus national intelligence. This involves focus national intelligence counters, which I have somewhere or another in this pile of stuff. It should be over here. Got that says Intel. Here we go. No, that says used, not focused. Oh, I don't know. I bet it's this. +2 DRM to next espionage. It doesn't have the word in it. That's what I'm guessing it is. This says must choose Intel ally. Do we have a picture? Yeah, somewhere there's a picture of all the pieces. Where was that? Is that in the governing manual or is it somewhere else? I don't think it's in the governing manual. Maybe it's in the presidential briefing book. There we go. Yeah, P. That's not it. These counters are placed on Russia and China's failed espionage. No, that's not it. Okay, I don't know, and I have to fucking pee. Frankly, I'm at an absolute loss. I've looked through this multiple times. I don't see what it is. It doesn't tell me what it is here. Maybe there's something that does that I just didn't see in the counter sheet or the thingamabobber. I have no fucking clue. Okay, so these are mystery counters as far as I'm concerned. Here we go. Here we go. Focus National Intelligence Collection. Why don't I have these over in here? There they are. Counter placed in a region's Focus National Intelligence. Okay. I'm struggling here. Goes through all the different types of intelligence. There are limits to their capacity. Yeah. The game gives you a maximum of 2 FNICs to prioritize among the 8 world regions. If you have superstars of the NSC, you can use this card to perform 1 intelligence gathering or SOF raid. I'm assuming that's Special Operations Forces or something like that, with an added -1 DRM. Okay, but that's got nothing to do with this. It's telling me this. It's not telling me what I can fucking do, yeah. Roll a d10 on the Focus National Intelligence for each region that has a counter. Yeah, this is interesting. It's telling... it tells me all about these counters, all kind of information. The game gives me a maximum of 2. Doesn't seem to be indicating that I can use them. If I have this, I can do something else. And then if somehow the counters end up somewhere, which this doesn't give me rules for, I get to roll a die here. Well, that seems like a fucking bunch of bullshit. So, again, I was expecting this to be better. My first glance at it, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. This isn't making sense in and of itself. It's lacking clear elements. So now I have to look at page 41 to try to make sense out of what this rule is talking about. During the beginning, you can perform in a region. FNIC approves you may have either 1 or 2 to use on a turn. Here's how you determine which. Be nice to tell me that instead of all this fucking information about intelligence resources and capabilities which cross all 18. This honestly, there is almost a paragraph worth of information that is just color. And it's not telling me how to calculate it in here. That's bullshit. I'm beginning to call this thing out more and more. What seemed like a great idea doesn't seem like it was as well handled in actuality. So here, I checked strategic capabilities for, okay, I remember this for both space warfare and strategic recon. If I am ahead of both China and Russia on these tracks, I get 2 markers. I am not, so I get 1 marker. Then I can place each one in one world region of my choice, but not CONUS, Russia, or China, and no more than 1 FNIC per region. These will provide a favorable die roll during intel ops, which I may or may not be able to do. If I have the NSC staff bonus, I can do them here. Otherwise, I think I have to do them through some other means. We've got intel gathering here. It's from the military actions, which means I'd have to take an action to do it. This gives me a free one here. During intel ops, the presence provides a favorable die roll. During activation phases 1 and 3, you will have an opportunity to perform focused national intelligence. To do so, consult this table. Ah, yes. So I get a roll anyway at this period. I get the opportunity to do regular intelligence, which this might bonus, but I also get a roll on this for wherever I did the focus. Forgot about that. If I have exceptional White House resources, yes. Okay. So it does explain it over here, but we took up a lot of space and didn't remind me of how I get these fuckers. Yes, it's mentioned somewhere else. And it may be on here. I don't see it here. And I don't know where else it might be on the board or whatever, but it wouldn't be helpful if it's just fluttering around somewhere stupid. So, the final thing, I'm hoping, is this set. Any 4, well, that's not what it says. Here it says one action for POTUS in each cabinet member over an activation stage 3 under the focused national intelligence. Yeah, okay. So here I would give one action that I can use with POTUS and each of my cabinet members from the 4 master actions pages, or remove a tension counter from anywhere on the game board. Okay, POTUS can do that. And then I can exchange an action for an AP if I want it instead. And then each cabinet member is allowed to perform an action of the types that they're allowed to. Or they can remove a tension from anywhere on the game board except China or Russia. This is the same as before. Fine. Then I get in any 4 diplomat or military actions. Now remember, this one only happens over in 3. But because 1 and 3 are so similar, we combine them into one set of rules. You may perform 4 actions total chosen from master diplomacy actions and or master military actions. You can also choose those under diplomatic / any sections of master presidential action chart. We don't know what that looks like. Okay, so we have diplomatic over here. These are things the president only can do, but I can do anything but diplomatic. But domestic on there, I guess, is what it's saying. Even though it says only for diplomatic or military, I'm allowed to take diplomatic or any. As this is POTUS only, your key cabinet members may not take any actions, but again, I think their bonuses apply. You may spend 2 APs to take an extra action. You can forego actions to recover APs, 1 per, just as before. And now, this will mostly be done again back when you hit stage 3. So we won't be repeating all of that, but we are going to go over here to activation phase 2 and 4, which is over here, which are exactly identical and will be repeated. So when we get to the end of 2, we go back and start over with 3 using the rules for 1 and 3. When we get to the end of 3, we go back and start back here at the rules of 4, and I'm going to break because I'm very frustrated with a couple of things I've had to search out in the rules so far, and I really don't feel like this is doing its job. It may often the case, not as much as I maybe would like to, but made my way up to the park. There were people still at the pavilion. Watched the sunset, came back down. There were a couple of people there, I think, scavenging bottles. By the time I got to the trash, I don't know. I looked in it and there were things on top that kind of prevented me from digging deeper. And but I got a little bit of a walk up the park. Anyway, we're on this next one, P9, page 9. This is a draw 1 chit. Now this is in phase 2. This works the same as the draw 1 chit here, with a couple of pluses. There's nothing different here. Has the specifics about the pluses. It is repeated here. Instead of like flip back and find things, I find that helpful. It wouldn't be necessary with a normal rule book and a sequence of play and whatnot, where you could have a shortened sequence of play outside the rule book. But with this kind of flip through type of thing, I think it's really important. It's bad enough I have to flip back and forth between 1 and 3 and then 2 and 4. Well, on phase 3 and then on phase 4 I have to, actually only on phase 3 do I have to flip back. But I have to flip back at the end of the turn too. Given the mechanism in play, I think they did that just right. Any 3 actions, same as usual, same restrictions. These are POTUS only. Core support. Okay, this is new. Let me relight my pipe because I let it go out while I got too excited. And we're getting to new things here that are in this series here. This. This is going to be like that, but then we have the UN part. And then we have war progress in both of these. And then here, this is going to be similar, but we have the state of the economy in there. So we can kind of see where it's going. Let's look at this core support. Adjust public approval according to your core support. If your popularity is greater than 40, move it down equal to core support or until you equal 40. What is core support? Party relations, I guess. That's what it's showing here. Here we go. And core support is going to be this number underneath. Does it say that? It does not. It's just we got this big number and this little number on party relations. It would be nice to label those, but what we see here is this little bar that shows core support number. So this does the job where you need it. That's good enough. It would be maybe helpful to say elsewhere. So if your popularity is high, you lose popularity equal to your core support. Wow. I don't know if that makes sense. But if it's low, you get it. Oh yeah. So this is like no matter what, your popularity is not going to get too high or too low based on how much the base of your party supports you. So if you're ideologically aligned with your base, you're guaranteed to be going up in overall popularity if your popularity is below that 40%. But if it's higher than 40%, you're going to go down. But what's really strange is that nothing happens if you're sitting at 40%, you just stay there, right? It's not, well, it is until you reach 40%. Okay, fair enough. But if you're not very ideological, then you can maintain a significant popularity or unpopularity, both of which make sense. And note, 18 to 70. Now, remember that W was somewhere around 90% support after 9/11. I mean, the country completely rallied around him, except for me, of course. You know, actually, everybody I knew did not. So I don't know. I found it very odd that the popularity was that high when I'm like, Jesus, there's got to be more people like me who are just like, this guy was an idiot and ignored the warnings, which was obvious right away. I don't know. Okay. And yes, I am one of them sort of core supporters, even if I don't really see the Democrats as particularly positive. This is the weird thing. If you look at the, how favorable one holds each party, they're both in the toilet right now. But that's because people who are going to vote in favor of that party are disgusted by it for one reason or another. There could be different reasons for it. Either that it's gone too far, but they can't accept the opposite, or that it's just not going far enough in the direction it's going. Okay, resolve terror acts or chaos. That's this. You roll a die, 50-50 chance whether you do terror or chaos. I don't know if there is a marker like they're probably not, like the Russia-China acts. Doesn't look like it. Looks like no matter what, it's going to be a die roll. Okay. If you got terror, you increase the regional crisis in every region containing at least a rogue state by 1 box. In each region where there are at least 2 level 1 terror groups, remove 2 of them and replace it with a level 2. You just flip one of them over, actually, and take the other one out. If the 2 terror groups are on the intel track of the region, put the level 2 terror group on the lower box of the 2. Okay, so if you've got an intelligence capability against them already, they kind of are able to hide their way in it. If at least one of them is not on the intel track, it goes in the region loose. And this appears to be something that you have the option of who to allow to consolidate. And then you roll a d10 on this little table, which can create more terror, or it can create possibly something nasty, including a terrorism event card from the unused pile. Goes into the reshuffle pile. I don't know which one of those is the terrorism pile. I think it's the second one. I would be able to look that up in the scenario book because I know the order in which I put them matched the order in which they're discussed. So it's not a big deal. And each terror group on the board each large terror group on the board improves the chance of this. Now, I don't think I have any 3s or 4s on the board, but there we go. Now, notice the consolidation doesn't get you above level 2. Then if there's at least 1 rogue state on the board, you roll a die. And it might export if there's a level 1 or 2 terror group in the Eurozone, randomly increase 1 such terror group by a level, otherwise add a new terror group in there, or maybe into the United States. Or it could cause some -1 AP counters in Russia or China. I think that hurts them, but I'm not sure. Think about the fact that like Chechnya really fucked with Russia, and China also has its own issues, or has had at various times in this. I don't know if they're in that much trouble right now. Okay, but it might end up being instead a chaos result. You increase the conflict status for a random conflict by 1 box. Random? Well, we got a die roll for all the possible conflicts that are on the board. If that ends up in a war, you set up the new war and make initial war progress check. That is something we're going to look up and worry about, I think, later, although maybe we'll jump in and look at the war rules a little bit. Cast procedure, yeah. Then you roll a die. On a 1 through 3, you draw a cascading event from the unused pile. That's the 3rd pile over there. I don't have things for it. It would be kind of useful if I had decks here instead of, I don't know, these are already all accounted for. So, and apply the results listed under C, which is a cascade, not chaos. Just as if you had drawn it from the deck, then place it in the 2 pile, which is what you generally do, because it's cascading. It can come back again and again, causing additional problems. Make an international chaos die roll over on this table on a 4 through 7, or increase domestic crises by 1 box and roll a d6. Now, domestic crises is something that I have at 0 here, because there were no instructions of where to put it, which really kind of troubles me. What can happen over here? Rogue action North Korea. You activate North Korea as if it was activated otherwise, or Iran, same thing. Major rift with an ally. Roll a d10 to determine the ally. Unlike the modern administration, you don't really get the choice to just piss off your allies. I'm not sure to what advantage. But yeah. But then again, you can't veto bills. So, this could be the president doing it. And this could cause multiple allies on a bad roll. Major Russian destabilization campaign in Eastern Europe. You affect Eastern Europe with a couple of boxes of crisis and a Russian influence marker. And similarly, China expands island building in the South China Sea, does the same sort of thing in the Asia Pacific, giving them influence as well. Then we move the counter forward. We just moved out of the Terror Chaos box up to here. This is an ally rogue group. You randomly draw one of the 4 chits. They're already set up random. To determine which group activates, refer to the applicable nation action chart and follow its instructions. I think each group is going to select certain possible allies and rogue nations that are in play. The weird thing here is we do have things like an unnamed rogue state here, which is Afghanistan. So it's not just rogue states like Iran and North Korea, which are treated differently. They're actually... So I don't know if these rogues, if the unnamed ones are ever going to be referenced by the game book. I'm assuming they do. Because it says for each ally and rogue nation in that group. We'll see how that works out. We could look at the book, WA 1 through 4. Let's take a peek. We ignored it before. Don't really see groups being put here. I'm assuming this is, Group A, yeah, UK, NATO, ROK, Iran. Then we go to Group B here. Now at the end, there's a final check unstable states, and that's going to be by regions. But I'm not seeing rogue states in there. Ally and rogue nation group C, Australia, Israel, India. This has rogues. So this is going to be for each rogue state. And then Canada, Gulf state, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and rogue. So interestingly, 2 of them are going to cause issues with the rogue states, which means that new rogue states may be more problem than the more established ones or whatever. And I'm creating a mess over here. Okay. One of these, this heavy armory here, I have upside down because it cannot be moved. It is always going to be in the Asia Pacific. I'm assuming that's the Japanese. Well, actually, I would assume that's the Korean garrison, but it may include some Japanese, some forces stationed in Japan as well. Because I know there are a fair amount there too, but obviously there are probably more in Korea. Although the Eurozone has a heavy army unit in it, that one can be moved. Okay. Place the allied chit in this space, flip it over, basically. That's how we're going to do it. And then the UN acts. The UN will take the following 4 actions. First, a humanitarian aid. It makes a roll, and yeah, this isn't making much sense to me. Roll a d10. On a 1 through 8, comma, -1 to regional crisis in region with the highest. Okay, on a 1 through 8, you help. Humanitarian aid is something that reduces the regional crisis. That happens from these as well, like from your own actions. Infrastructure aid, roll a d10. 1 through 5, you increase the regional stability on the lowest stability, solving randomly. Youth empowerment, 1 through 5, you decrease a level 2 or 3 terror group in the lowest stability region by 1 level. Resolve types by prioritizing a region with a level 3 terror group and then randomly between those regions. And Civil War peace talks roll up on brokered peace table for either a Civil War or CW ceasefire on the lowest stability region that contains such a counter, resolving ties by prioritizing civil wars first and then randomly. You can't spend any APs on this for die roll modifiers. These are all actions you can do as president, but the UN is willing to do them themselves sometimes. Then we get to US-initiated UN actions, which is just part of this. After the mandatory, you can choose to perform up to 2 US-initiated UN actions, including actions already performed by the US, but not infrastructure aid. You can spend AP on UN goodwill counter, 1 US-initiated UN action, plus an AP. If you perform 2 actions, one of them has to be paid with an AP and the other with a UN goodwill counter, and you may not perform the same action twice. Sounds like I can buy the UN goodwill counters by spending an AP, and it counts as one of my UN actions, and I'm building up capabilities for the UN for later, banking them essentially that I could use now, but I'm spending more to have them in the bank. To have 2, I have to have a UN goodwill counter, which I don't start with any. And those are over here somewhere, I think. Yeah. Now those I thought have a number on the back, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's a modifier though. This represents all the ways in which the U.S. partners with regional partners, NGOs, and yes, even UN, subsidiaries and programs, the Security Council, the WHO, the UN High Commission for Refugees, UNESCO, etc. I hope that all the information I need for the game is in here so that I don't need that dross. That dross could be in the game manual instead. If you spend 1 AP to get an action, you get a -1 DRM on your die roll for that action. If you spend UN goodwill, you flip it over and you use the number on the other side for it. And then here's what we get. You need to roll a low number. The minuses are good. Humanitarian aid, I'll reduce the regional crisis. Infrastructure is not available in this case, but in general, it would increase stability in a region. Youth empowerment, what do these asterisks mean? I got asterisks. Automatic UN action during each UN act segment on the turn sequence. Yeah. I don't know what it's trying to tell me with that. I guess that's the 4 that it does, or 3 that it does. Does humanitarian infrastructure, youth empowerment. It does not do Civil War peace talk. Oh yeah, it does. It does there too. Yeah. Sanctions. If I get the right roll, I can put sanctions on North Korea or Iran. And this is subtracted by the current value of the nation's nuclear missile track from the roll, which means, I don't know, I'm trying to find it. Yeah, it's up there. The higher along they are on getting nukes or ICBMs, the more likely that I'm going to be able to get sanctions against them by doing this. Arms control negotiations decrease Iran or North Korea's nuclear missile track by 1 box, reversing any tensions listed in the new lower box. Okay, now this is fucked up. I saw this in the rolls. So the tensions gets reduced at the lower box. This is GMP 35. This I actually remember. Not the box that you were just in. That's not here, though. Sent me here. Arms control negotiations, I don't see there. maybe it's here. Now this is fucked up. We didn't see this before. Maybe we'll hit it again, but US-initiated UN. This will be followed by a media check in which will gain public approval if your media relations are high, or lose it if they're low. It pays to keep friends in the media. I don't remember seeing that, but what we were looking for here was arms control negotiations. We have sanctions here. Sanctions are something that you can do on your own. So here we're stuck in something else again, where, what did it do? Reversing any tensions in the next lower box. This pisses me off. This is not Iran influence. Those are like Chinese. This is going to be the nuclear missile and tracks and nuclear. It looks like it says missile and tracks. No, it's just nuclear missile tracks. Let's see whether there's a rule on that, because there's something weird. Nuclear missile tracks, 37. Or if we're in the 2000 to 2008 area, we can call it nuclear. Okay. De-escalation can occur through arms negotiations, which is the UN, and through summits with Russia and China. When this occurs, move the counter for that country back on its nuclear missile track. As you do so, immediately remove the appropriate number of tension counters from the affected countries listed on the boxes for each level of de-escalation you have achieved. Whatever the tensions penalty is in the new lower box, you remove that number of tension counters from the named countries. Now, that seems really weird. If it increases from 3 to 4, 2 tensions are placed on North Korea, ROK. Yeah, let's see this. Okay. From 3 to 4, 2 tensions are increased on these. So when I go from 3 to 4, it's saying I get these increases. When I go to 4 to 3, I lose these? Weird. But that is how it seems to imply. Okay, you also lose 2 APs, and Asia-Pacific stability is lowered. But well, you will not get the APs back. I'm not so sure about the stability, because that's kind of like they go out of their way to say you do not gain the listed APs. It doesn't say anything about the stability. I assume you wouldn't, but I would also assume on a later turn the track decreases back to 3. You do not regain any APs, but you remove the tensions counter listed in the 3 box, thus removing 1 tension each from these countries. Note that Australia does not lose its tensions counter, nor does Asia Pacific regain its lost stability. I'm assuming that. I don't know about the stability, because this is fucked up, right? So here the Pacific stability is here but not here, and Australia's +2 tensions is not copied here. So it is indeed what it seems like. If I go from 4 back down to 3, these go away. What's absolutely not clear is what happens with the Pacific stability. They call that out as if it is the same as the tensions. But they don't actually directly address whether you get the stability back. If, for example, I went from 5 to 4, would I get that stability back? I don't know. It calls out that I don't get any APs back that I lost. Those are marked here. But it does not call back about the stability. in either direction. And I'm really torn as to what it means by this, because it seems really ambiguous the way they worded it. Yeah. There's some definite fuzziness in terms of how these were shaken out, and I'm not sure what's up with that. Okay, where were we? We were on the arms control. Then roll a d10 again to determine whether Russia or China gains an influence counter in the region as a result. And on an 8 or more, they don't. Basically, they can get some advantage from the arms control talks. In part because they're supporting the arms control process. Of course, they're getting it in other places. Central South Asia, over in the India and Afghanistan, Pakistan, whatnot. And then also in the Asia Pacific box. And both countries, either country could get the advantage. De-escalate. Decrease a conflict track at conflict status 3 or 4 by 1 level and remove 2 tensions from each side on a success. I don't know how tensions end up on a conflict. We haven't seen anything that generates that. That's what it sounds like it's talking about. Again, this is not the easiest way to get all the rules in place, but yeah, I don't know. Those tensions might be somewhere else. So like US-Iran, I don't know, those might be these tensions in the cabinet or in CONUS. I don't know. And on the Iran side, Iran does have tensions markers. So that kind of makes sense. Each of these nations that's listed here has potential tension markers. I guess Israel's neighbors, I'm not sure what that means. It could be Syria, Iran, but it could also be South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states. Conceivably, they could be not really in favor of what's going on with Israel. So I just don't know. Do we have an answer with what we saw? I don't think so. Let's take another look. Let's see. This is page 35 in here, once again. And I mean, these are the kinds of things I'm going to have to be able to resolve during play, right? Like, if I can't figure them out now, who says I'm going to be able to figure out during play? So what we're looking at here is we're looking for de-escalate. De-escalate is not in that rule, is not in that page, and I don't see it here, nor here. It might be back here. We were talking about tensions. Okay, we don't see it there. So now we look for de-escalate, and we don't see it here. So now maybe it's diplomatic. I've got to decrease tensions. That doesn't seem to be it. I have de-escalate. This does not give me a rule to go look into. Prevent a war from breaking out during activation. Cause an action. Choose a conflict track not at war roll. Decrease, place a trending pro-U.S. in relations with U.S. and one or more and or on the region if ally Iran DPRK. Remove 1 tension counter from every country involved. Okay, I don't know what the countries involved are, who Israel's neighbors are. That could be everybody in the Middle East. I don't know. I just don't know. Like, who is Israel at war with? Maybe there's some place that it would tell me. Obviously, Iran and or Syria are possibilities, but these unstable states might well be, and I would not completely rule out the Gulf states or Saudi Arabia from having some tension with Israel and it being a part of that. So, yep, don't have an answer and will not have an answer, I think, unless we find something. Civil War peace talks attempt to end a civil war. This is another chart. I am afraid to look at the charts. Mediate peace in a war. Okay, this has lots of stars. For wars involving Russia or China, use the DRM for the current U.S. relations with that country as a DRM. If the role is successful, end the war and place a trending pro-U.S. counter on the region's alignment track. Okay? We have some DRMs baked into all of these, which is either going to be the UN goodwill or a -1. But if this is U.S. initiated, no matter what, we add or subtract the world opinion of the U.S. box. The marker here. So if the U.S. is not seen in good light, they're not going to be able to take these things. They're not going to be able to undertake these easily. Civil War resolution, broker peace. Hey, it's right here. How about that? That's what we had to do, right? I don't know. It's not clear. It says mediate peace in a war. Civil War, oh no, this is it. So this says WM4, but there's this. Huh. Well, now I'm lost because there's WM. Okay. Page 4 is this, the UN actions, but that's in WD. So let's look in WM. We got page numbers for what they are. So Civil War brokerage, but that's this chart. Why is it sending me from there to there? Because the UN action or whatever maybe could have caused that. I'm not sure. It's just a copy and paste situation. So this is helpful that it's here. You'll have to roll on this table during UN Act segment for specific civil wars chosen by the UN or the US, as well as during the war progress segment for all civil wars. Roll a D10 and use the appropriate column based on the status. It's either in civil war ceasefire. You have modifiers. The UN gets a -1. You get a -1 if you spend an AP to trigger a roll, say up here, I guess. And note, there's no actual die roll here. You're rolling on the table, not rolling to see if you get on the table. If you spend X UN goodwill, you get the minus for that. Yeah, so you get the bonus with the UN goodwill. And these can cause various different things, dropping it to a ceasefire here. We've got an asterisk, which can give you UN goodwill for trying to resolve the issue on a good roll. You get your goodwill back or whatever. Now the media check. Where did we hit the media check? We saw the media check somewhere. Regardless of whether you performed any U.S.-initiated actions, check your media relations and apply any public approval listed on the box on your current media relations. Okay, so that was the thing that I thought wasn't there. That's actually, it's not included anywhere. It's just here, and that says go to GM27. I hope that's the page I was on. No, this is just the page about the media itself. I was on page 35 where I think I found it, but maybe not. Maybe I was somewhere else. Where did I see the media thing? U.S. initiated, yeah, this will be followed by a media check in which you gain public approval of your media relations. So I'm going to follow this instead. this appears to indicate that I had to do UN actions initiated by the US. This says, regardless of whether I performed any. That seems more specific. The other one, yeah, maybe it's vague, but it definitely looked like I would ignore it if I didn't do any. Right, okay, I'm pooped. What's next? 3 domestic actions. This is normal. We've seen things like this before. Move counter forward. We're getting to the draw 1 chit. Now, where are we here? We just had 3 domestic actions, draw a chit. You don't get a repeat on these chits. So the next thing we're going to look at, and a lot of information here being repeated again. Again, I think that's a good thing. But we're going to get to the war progress, and I am going to pause there because, once again, this thing, all the lookups I'm making just to get through the rules are pooping me out. But remember, I'm not actually having to read this thing to you, right? Are there a few questions? Yeah, I think there are. They fall off my mind, though. Maybe we'll get answers to them. We've gotten answers to some things, but we've also not gotten answers to others, and I think there are no answers. For example, the setup of these. So now we're on the perform war progress for wars and civil wars. For each current war, use the war status sideboard and resolve the progress of the war. WM5, page 16 WCB. That's this set. So WM5 is right here. Oh boy. So wars are a whole bunch of stuff. I think we need to bop into this because, let me just see this. Yeah, it looks like we have to bop into this because wars aren't really discussed terribly in here, if I recall correctly. Page 44 gives us an overview of those. Countries can go to war with each other. Wars are different from civil wars. This is civil wars, but also regular wars. You cannot go to war with a terror group at any level. You can only raid them. You can instigate a war with a rogue state as a military master action. We may need to do this. If a level 4 rogue state exists at the end of any turn, it's an automatic loss, but Korea and North Korea and Iran are not rogue states, even though they are. In addition to instigating a war against a rogue state, you may, as a result of a conflict table, going to war, or a crisis card or chart, go to war with others. For example, you may go to war with Iran. U.S. has a conflict track with them, or North Korea as part of a Republic versus North Korea war. Number of wars cause auto losses. We've already talked about that, but if there's more than 4 wars on the map, it's an auto loss. And the table over there only handles 5. More than 5 wars. Did I say 4? That sounds like I said that, and I don't believe it. Wars are fought in an abstract way that's resolved twice during a turn in the war progress segment. In the turn sequence, activation phases 2 and 4, that's what we're on right now. For full details, see the war progress chart and the world charts booklet. We will look at those later. Strength counters track the shifting strength of the combatants as casualties are taken or reinforcements arrive, as opposed to, I guess, the relative strength marker there. Setting up a war. These steps are summarized here but explained in more detail in WM5. We're going to look at WM5, so I'm not going to worry too much about this. It's possible that when you do a military action number 6, you get a surprise. The SecDef can bonus that. Other game effects can grant one side in the war a benefit of surprise. Surprise means that their first war progress die roll will get a bonus of -1 on the DRM. But all other combat die rolls after the first don't have this. No matter how the war starts, you'll do an initial war progress die roll using surprise. This is described in WM5. We'll be hitting that. It's probably going to be very repetitive. If no one wins the war on the initial die roll, you only roll during war progress segments. You total up the strength for each side, and USMC units have a combat strength of 3 if they're actually in the war's region, but if they're attacking out of the CV zone, then they only have a strength of 2. And that is handled this way. I don't think I have any other Marines at sea. Those are in the med. Okay. Express the attacker versus defender on an odds ratio, rounding down in favor of the defender. Get DRMs that'll be, I don't know what WCT1 is. Is that part of this too? Sounds like it. Yep. Make a war progress roll. Find the results, the appropriate odds column. Results are stated as a move, a loss, and possibly some asterisks. A move results in the conflict status marker moving towards the attacker defender. Conflicts other than combined air and ground move more slowly, transiting on the bottommost boxes. Okay, if we look at the war, what they mean by that is if I'm moving it in this direction towards the attacker, it would have to go through these spaces if it's just an air or missile or guerrilla war. But if it's a ground war, it ignores those boxes and moves more rapidly. Fuck. Had a bit of spill of tobacco. An asterisk can potentially end the war. A double asterisk transforms it into a guerrilla war. A triple asterisk swaps the attacker and defender unless the war ends. Losses are depicted by strength point counter reduction for non-U.S. countries, while the U.S. will pay a political price at home to replace them. As you apply results from the combat table, which will be WCT1, add +1 to regional crises in the war's region. If a U.S. war, place 1 U.S. military footprint counter on the region. Those counters also occurred due to just having troops in the region, I believe. If one side wins, if the conflict status counter is either attacking forces win or defending forces win, the war is over. If neither side wins and there's no peace, the war continues, the action is finished, and you'll do it again in the next progress segment. There are various consequences to winning or losing a war. Okay. At the end of the turn, for each U.S. war, there's going to be a worsening economy on the U.S. Economy. Unless the current war status is U.S. winning, you decrease public approval by 2 boxes. If the U.S. is involved in a war, there's no chance. Now, U.S. winning is this box. So you have to have it significantly, in the case of an air missile war, beyond the stalemate. Or else public approval's unhappy. If the U.S. is involved in a war, there's no chance to be an agent of peace, and thus no possibility to win a Nobel Peace Prize. I think Obama got his Peace Prize while we were engaged in, I don't know, something that felt like war. The U.S. doesn't actually get in wars anymore, so, you know. A U.S. military footprint counter is placed in the region where the U.S. is at war. A region can have more than one U.S. military footprint counter. Now, there's somewhere else where it talks about footprint counters happening whether you're at war or not. A region can have more than one. These can result in a loss of public approval, crisis level, new terror groups, strengthening of additional, -1 to regional stability. If more than one footprint's present, consequences are cumulative. U.S. forces can only directly support NATO and the ROK if either or both enter the war. To support any and all other allies, use the Military Master Action number 5, the A option, resupply an ally that's at war. Okay. As you can see, things that are in there don't necessarily give you a hell of a lot of a feel. Well, we were going to look at this, starting a war. Is this adding anything to me? Find the name of the country at war on the table below and place numerical counters on either both strength forces boxes to take their strength into account. So we have difference between between regular strength and the air missile strength. And we got markers for the attacker and defender to be at war. You got markers to indicate the type of war that it is. Okay. Yeah. The U.S. has its own strengths on its military counters, and I think that's I think those are going to be the strengths that go with that. The conflict. You put the conflict type on the board, you put the conflict status on stalemate to begin with. If the war trigger did not specify who the attacker and defender is, you randomize. Country at war counter showing the name of the country. Okay, there are markers, a whole pile of markers here that cover all the different nations at war. We have these things which indicate, I guess, where the war is. They're numerical markers that match the spaces on the board. Kind of like the trench warfare boxes in Imperial Elegy, yeah? Okay, and then we read this. Also take into account that adversaries and peers in red get a +1 strength point bonus if you're playing normal and +3 if you're playing on harder difficulty. All of these nations. If this war was triggered or governed by a conflict track, set it to war if it isn't already, and add numerical counters equal to the relative strength value next to the conflict track on the side favored. So we're going to be seeing, you know, a plus for whichever side has the bonus. Now, you'll notice, like Iran, the U.S. is almost always going to be advantaged against it. This is meant to represent, you know, so like China is going to be stronger than Japan. Russia is going to always be stronger than Ukraine. That doesn't mean they'll win. It just means that's a modifier in addition to whatever you get here. So if we look here, Russia has 10 strength, no matter what, plus possible bonuses, whereas Ukraine has 5, and then Russia would also have up to another +4. So they're going to be significantly stronger. Not sure. Not sure the game really is assessing those values right, but we'll see how the wars actually turn out. It might be that we could see something like the actual Ukraine war play out here. Okay. Place a war counter in the region to to match the war that it is. Make a war progress roll, with the exception that you ignore a single asterisk result for the beginning. Now, when you progress the war, Russia or China has to do a cyber attack to try to bolster their strength in the war. If it's a U.S. war, you also get a free cyber attack unless you've already performed one against the target during this activation phase. Activation phase is the entire bar coming down of 2 columns, not the specific space that you're in. Or, unless you are currently in the special activations phase. Special activations is over here, that column. Each rogue state is considered a distinct target for this purpose. See WM3 for details. Oh boy. Well, WM5 is a lot of pages. WM3 is military, cyber attacks, military charts, but not the special forces. What did we get lost in? I mean, we've got such a stack of roles to try to pay attention to here, but I'm trying to get some kind of grasp on what to do if there's a war. But for some reason, I went to starting a war here, but there's lots of pages WM5. So we'll continue with where we are, I guess. Strength of UN regional. +4 if it's not in Eastern Europe or Southern South Asia. U.S. attack subs. Okay. This adds up what the U.S. will be out of. Limited naval reach on normal or harder. When playing on normal or harder, unless the U.S. Naval Forces training and tech is 4 or higher, each carrier and USMC unit located in a deployment zone, a CVBG deployment zone, can only provide their strength to a single region in a given war progress segment. But they can apply it to multiple wars conceivably. Temporarily move each unit on the line connecting to the selected region, to the dot basically, or near it. +1 regional crisis in the war's region. Oh, what the fuck this is. Is this part of this or something else? This looks like it's a different formatting. So yeah, regional crisis happens no matter what. U.S. military footprint will happen. During this point, total up the strength of each side, express, then look at the conflict type, see the DRM, make a roll. These are the movement options, the asterisks. We've kind of had an explanation of those. The war can end if one side wins on the track. One side has a strength of 0 before or after the war progress roll. An asterisk result is obtained on war progress other than the initial. Single asterisk. Unless this is the initial war, both sides are spent and agree to a peace, proceed to ending the war. Okay, so that's like a white peace. Yeah. That hasn't happened in Ukraine. Some ally already, these wars aren't tiring the countries out as much as they should. Some ally rogue results on the pure actions direct you to end a war. Diplomatic master actions allows you to end a war. The use of a WMD by a rogue state against Russia. Whoa. Wow. Cases 3, 4, and 5 are covered at the end of the section. No side is indicated as the winner or loser. Case 6 is at the end of the war combat table and supersedes this section. That sounds scary. Go through every relevant section that applied to the war that just ended. Who the fuck can Russia attack? I mean, yeah, NATO definitely has WMDs, but okay, I don't know. Maybe Ukraine kept a couple and they didn't. Yeah, they sure should have. Rogue state wins, increase rogue state by 1 level, place 2 unstables. Rogue state loses, you're going to start, obviously that's good. U.S. wins, you get some approval, you get relations with Congress, all kind of good stuff. If you lose, it's pretty bad. Just ask the current administration. U.S. ally wins. You get an AP counter on a plus AP counter. The U.S. gets some approval. If the ally relationship is very close, you get a legacy point. Otherwise, you improve the ally relationship. But if they lose, it's bad. If Russia-China wins, add 1 to the winning peer's influence counter in the war's region. Place an AP counter bonus on them. They have their own AP counters as opposed to the generics. If they lose, they take penalties. Okay, we don't have to worry, but what about an asterisk? Even if the war ends with no clear winner or loser, some benefits or penalties can be awarded. U.S. can choose to reject peace and continue the war. They get penalty to public approval and world opinion. And then you skip the rest. If the conflict status was on the stalemate box on either blue or black, adjacent to stalemate, skip the rest of the section, so you don't take any penalties for that. If it was on or beyond the forces winning box on the U.S. side, you get a bonus. Otherwise, a penalty to public approval. Ally or U.S. supported war, if the conflict status was on or beyond forces winning, you get bonuses or penalties. Okay. I'm not too worried about any of this. If the war was governed by a conflict track, reset that conflict track 2 boxes before the war box with specifics for Israel and neighbors. Are they a particularly short? Yeah, they're a shorter track than anyone else's, and that's why that's there. Reset relative strength to at start. And then move it in favor of the side who won the war, if any. Remove the war counter. Now, in normal or harder games, there's more penalties to the adversaries, etc. So that's that. Now, that was WM5. Now, page 16, WCB. Okay, this is page 16, but this is of WM5. They're saying WCB. Is there a WCB 15? No, this is, oh, I don't know. What's WCB stand for? Nothing is WCB in here, so it's just the whole book. Okay, fine. Did we get everything we want? You said page 16. That started us over here with, I don't know, some more information. Okay, whatever. We're not too worried. I think we can pick it up. All right. So anyway, huge amounts of rules for wars and civil wars. We will have to dive into it in more detail, but I'm getting kind of a feel for what it's going to mean. Did we have a combat chart for the war? I thought we did. On the war combat table, WCT1. That's got to be in here, right? It should be. War combat table, page 29. And that's your odds choice or chart. with various capabilities there. And move these. The 2-star can turn it into a guerrilla war. Yeah, that was the special rule on that. Now, what about this? Civil War Resolution Broker Peace. You will have to roll on this table during the UN Acts segment for specific civil wars chosen by the UN or the US, as well as during War Progress for all civil wars. Roll a D10 and use the appropriate column for the Civil War. So it looks to me like civil wars, no matter what, have a chance of resolving themselves. Looks like I have a chance to spend APs on them, even if it's in this segment. I'm not sure. It's not spelling that out, but it's also not giving me a reference. So, I don't know. All right. Then we have any 4 diplomatic and or military actions as the next thing on there after the wars. Where did we hit? We were at War Progress. We're here. This is normal thing with 4 actions. You notice nothing by the cabinet members. Was there something elsewhere where the cabinet got something? Yeah, that was over here. Okay. All right. Then we have move counter 1 forward. After the NE4, it goes 1 forward. I'm not happy about this. It says US SOE impact. It's at the bottom here. I don't know if this is another thing. It looks kind of like this. So I guess it's part of this same thing. Economic assistance, you're allowed to do economic assistance as has been described before. Update game state, potentially gaining or losing public approval, blah, blah, blah. Then we move forward. Now, if you completed phase 2, you go back to the page for phase 3, which is the same as phase 1. It talks about that here. Otherwise, if you completed 4, you flip forward to final activations over here, which is this draw. Draw a chit. This is crisis chits. I am assuming it's the same as before. It looks like the same thing, even though it's printed in a different style. Possible single end draw again. Looks like there's supposed to be 3 of these. But I got some kind of end turn marker in here. So what's going? If the crisis chit you just drew had no plus, this finishes the segment. Move your counter to 1 allied rogue group acts. This is final activations. I draw a crisis chit. If the crisis chit had no plus, I move to 1 allied rogue group act segment of the activation phase. That is not on here. I go from here, and I don't see that. Do I go back here, or what? It wouldn't seem to make sense. It would seem to me that we'd go back to special activations, but maybe special activations are only in the first year of a 4-year term. No. Looks like each year, which is a turn, starts with U.S. special activations. And that's what this says. So I don't know what they're talking about here. Plus, that would actually be jumping me way out to here, so I don't know what's up with that. If the crisis chit had no plus, this finishes the segment. Move your counter to the one ally rogue group segments of the activation phase on the turn sequence track. I don't know. I think that's a copy from this and appears to be a misprint. And that's what I'm going to read it as, which means that this is fucked up. It talks about a third event chit. That's not what's showing here. If a plus, draw again. It looks like what's supposed to happen is here instead, which is if you get the plus, you roll to see if the turn ends, or you get another crisis. Well, if it doesn't end, you end up getting another crisis chit. I think this is fucked up and wrong. Not surprised, to tell you the truth. And then we hit the end turn, which has a whole shitload of stuff, which is coming several pages of rules. How do these work? Cleanup. Place any drawn Russian acts 2 crisis chits in the extra actions box if the corresponding world peer is at posture 1, otherwise they stay in the draw cup. Then return all other crisis chits to the draw cup. That leads me to believe that the crisis chits don't go back in. That wasn't specified before, was it now? Let's look at our first draw crisis chit. I mean, we could look at the last one, but that one's so broken. Draw 1, then place it on the draw 1 chit space of the crisis. It'll be returned at the end of the turn. Okay, it is specified. I'm assuming it's specified here too for whatever that matters. Draw 1, put it on the draw 1 chit space of the turn sequence. Okay, so those crisis chits are going to be placed on here and fill up spaces, which is important because it helps you see how many have gone. It's also important because the chits can't be repeated. Interesting. Flip over the 4 allied group markers, randomize them, and place them in the left side, letter side down in the 4 boxes. This talks about this, which is how I was told to set it up, and is all fine and everything, but other places in the rules, it's talking about them as if I'm drawing a new one. Obviously, again, some artifacts that didn't quite make it through the polishing phase of this. Now, I know that the original went through significant blind testing. I feel like this one did not. Whatever happened, it didn't get as rigorous a cleanup as it should have. We're finding several problems with these. Remove any can't increase this turn counters on the nuclear missile tracks. Okay, those are going to come from charts, I assume. I know where they are. Move all bills in the past and signed bills back into unused where they're now eligible to be used again. Place a trending anti-U.S. counter on both Russia and China's U.S. relationship track. They're just going to start disliking us no matter what. Adjust public priorities by moving counters up the list from the bottom box to the top box to fill any blank spaces from any previously passed legislation. Something I missed, when something gets passed out of there, I guess it gets pulled out and put somewhere else. Now they get a chance to slide up, but only now, because there's possibilities that they get squeezed in through events on the table, I believe. Then for any blank priorities that are left, randomly draw and place public priorities from their draw cup to create a new list. You can change or reorder your administrative legislative priorities. I thought that was something I did back here. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was just part of setup. Okay, consequences. Regional stability impact on security and limitation of growth of terror groups. Okay, what? For each of the 8 world regions, look at the current stability in each region and adjust the terror groups, unstable states, and rogue states based on the stability. If it's 7 or 8, you decrease the lowest level terror group in the region by 1 level, eliminating a level 1 group. If there are any rogue states in the region, reduce the largest one by 1 level. A level 1 rogue state so reduced becomes a level 4 terror group unless that rogue state is at war, in which case it remains a rogue state. And remove 1 unstable state counter from the region. But, on the other hand, if stability is down to 3, you get more terror groups. So basically the stability of the regions is going to cause you more problems at this point. If at any stability you are asked to add a terror group and you can't because the maximum terror groups in that region at that stability has been reached, you increase the region's largest terror group by 1 level. A 4 would become a rogue state. This is a weird thing. The more stable a region is, the less terror groups you're allowed to have in it. That makes sense. And we have, I don't know what these are. Those terror groups? Yeah, those are terror group symbols. Same other thing. So you have a max of 3 in the region at like stability 8. What that means, if I'm asked to add one, then I end up instead increasing the largest terror group by a level, which could actually create a bigger problem because of the stability than adding more terror groups would. Feels kind of funny. Just something, you know, I'm not sure, but it feels like something that like is counterintuitive when you look at it. If 2 terror groups need to be added, add each terror group 1 at a time, resolving the effects. If a region containing US allies now has 2 or more unstable states in it, decrease 1 non-estranged ally relationship, choosing randomly, by 1 level. That's nasty. Terrorist recruiting and planning. In 2 distinct random regions, make 2 10-sided die rolls to determine which regions. It says distinct, which means I think you roll again if you fail at one. If you match the same region. Increase a level 1 terror group to level 2. If there isn't a level 1 terror group in the region, add a new one. Then make a homeland security check. If you fail, add a level 1 terror group in CONUS and add 1 new terrorism card from the unused terrorism pile to the existing crisis deck. The existing crisis deck is not the reshuffle pile. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure how these decks get fiddled around with. You get 1 per year. You get a new deck per year. You get the reshuffles in there. I don't know how it all how the mechanics all work. Rogue state impact and recruiting. If there's a rogue state 4 on the game board, the game ends in an auto loss for the player. If you ever run out of rogue state markers, so that the player cannot place another counter called for, the game immediately ends in an auto loss. Somebody mentioned they got an auto win in the game. That, as far as I know, doesn't exist. We'll see. Maybe there's some way. But, yeah, I don't know of any. Maybe they were playing the Russians. For each rogue state, 2 or 3 counters on the board. Decrease the region's stability by 1 box and increase the highest level terror group in that region by 1 level, which could create a rogue state. For each that's for each rogue state counter in there. It's just nasty. For each rogue state 1 on the board, increase the regional crisis counter in that region by 1 state. So you really don't want rogue states. Now, do I have any? I have unstables here. I have a rogue state over here. That has to be dealt with. That's a real problem. Or else it's going to expand its rogue state. No, it's going to expand its terror groups, which could create another rogue state. And yeah, if there are no rogue states of any level anywhere on the board, world opinion for the U.S. goes up by 1, UN goodwill, a couple of counters, +3 public approval, and you can improve one ally relationship of your choice by 1 level. That's nice. Recruiting. Randomly select 1 rogue state on the board and roll a die. A DRM, if it has a -1 AP on it, might get a recruiting success, in which case that rogue state increases by a level. A rogue state 3 increase at this time does not cause an auto loss. You've already passed that point. Remove a -1 AP from all game created, not Iran or North Korea, rogue states that have them. Okay. For each U.S. war, put a worsening economy counter on the U.S. SOE track. And remember, if you get multiple of these, it sends you down no matter what. Unless the current war status is U.S. winning or better in cases of air or missile and guerrilla wars. Decrease public approval by 2 boxes. I'm assuming that's for each U.S. war, because that is the initial clause. Increase each, but it's kind of weird because we got a period here after the 4 each. Unless the current war is U.S. winning or better in this. Yeah, this is really fucking weird. Wait, for each U.S. war, place a worsening economy on this. Unless the current war state, so this is another clause. Unless the current war status is U.S. winning or better, you decrease public approval. So, worsening economy is going to happen no matter what for the war. The public opinion problem only happens if the U.S. isn't winning the war. Increase regional crisis by 1 for each civil war counter, but not ceasefire in it. We're running low on battery here. This is a long section. Unexpected consequence of U.S. military footprints. Flip all the military footprints counters. I'm reading it a little differently. And apply the result in that region. Remove the footprint counters from the board and mix them face down in the off-map holding box. Then place new U.S. military footprint counters in each region to match the number of non-intel, non-air, non-SOF U.S. military units. Okay. Even if there is no ongoing war in the region. And U.S. wars there. You don't have to place a counter for any troops deployed in the Eurozone, Eastern Europe, or carrier zones. Now, we have one always in the Asia and Pacific. That's just going to cause a problem. Interesting. Good government and improving stability. For each region that has a regional crisis rating of 0, 1 or less unstable state counters, and no rogue state counters, increase its stability by 1 box. For each region that has a regional crisis of 1, no unstable states and no rogue state, remove any 2 tension counters from the region, or decrease any 2 terror groups by 1 level each. That sounds like there are 2 different things you can't mix and match, so you couldn't do like 1 tension and 1 terror group. For each region that has a regional crisis rating of 1, a single unstable state, and no rogue state, remove 1 unstable state counter. Interesting. All right, we're going to pause there and hit the the EU economic stability later because I'm almost out of battery, and this is a fatiguing section. It's just a large, cookbook type recipe as to what you do, but I feel like we do need to go over it, think about it a little bit as we go, as to the implications, because this is telling us, yeah, this is what we're going to pay for the things that we leave on the map that are going to cause us trouble. Let's see what we can get through. I'm really tired, but hoping to get this loaded up tonight. Okay. EU economic stability, the Eurozone, state of economy can affect their stability. If it's 6 or higher, it increases. If it's lower, it goes down. All of the following have to be true. to get the Nobel Prize. There's no current U.S. wars or ally wars. There are 2 or fewer non-ceasefire civil wars on the board. You have 3 or more UN goodwill counters accumulated in your box. Then you're acclaimed as an important figure in helping the world move towards global peace. If you haven't won the Nobel Peace Prize on a previous turn, you win it. And you get legacy, prestige, public approval, and world opinion. If you have won the Nobel Peace Prize at the end of a previous turn, you're acclaimed anyway and appreciated as an ongoing agent of peace. And you get less advantages. Remove the 3 UN goodwill markers and place them in their off-board holding boxes in either event. So holding those UN goodwill markers, you're expending them for something to get that award or whatever else. Changing world opinion on the U.S., possible improved world opinion. Check the current world opinion of the U.S. Then look at the 8 regions. However many have a regional alignment greater than or equal to 6. If that number is greater or equal to the current world opinion of the U.S., you increase the world opinion by 1 box. But if at least 3 regions have an alignment of 4 or less, you decrease the world opinion by 1 box. Could you get both of those? I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I guess you could get both, especially if world opinion is low. Effects of trade agreements. For each trade agreement counter on the board, roll on the trade agreement table in the World Charts booklet using the column of that region's stability. If you have a low stability, you could get a penalty from this. And then you see if it continues as well. Campaign promise, if you pass legislation of your own this year, well, if you did not this year or a previous year that fulfilled your campaign promise, you get penalties on public approval and party relations. You keep that admin priority in the campaign promises. You'll evaluate your success again in the next move. If this is the end of turn 4 and you still haven't fulfilled it, you hang your head in shame and immediately subtract 3 legacy points as well. Congressional reaction to your public approval. If your rating is 60 or higher, your relations with Congress increase by 1 box and you get a new friend, as long as your relations allows you one. If it's below 40, though, now again, strangely enough, you start at 40, and that is to represent sort of the honeymoon period of the presidency when they actually do have public approval, regardless of how hard fought an election might be. It is almost never that low, and I'm really kind of disturbed by that. But anyway, you get a new enemy. If Russia or China has higher strategic missile defense capability than the U.S., you lose a homeland security. On harder difficulties, you get penalties just for the year. And, whoa. Okay, and those might include losing cabinet members. You might lose, wait. Okay, yeah, your peers, that's China and Russia, might increase strategic capabilities at random. They get influence at random. On year 4, you go through the process of adding influence a second time. I don't know. Oh, that's going to be the this thing. Okay. Add a New Year deck and reshuffle. If this isn't the end of turn 4, you shuffle the next deck. into the current crisis deck, count the cards currently in the reshuffle pile, and half of them are removed permanently from the game, rounded down, and the rest go back into the New Year deck and get shuffled together. So you don't know quite what's missing from the deck. I'm assuming it says randomly. This is your new crisis deck for the coming year. If this is the end of turn 4, you have been reelected to a second term and want to keep playing. There's a setup in the scenario book for that. And we'll have to look at that. Is SSB? Yeah. Briefing. I'll reset these later. What page? Page 12. You can replace your Secretary of State, your Chief of Staff, and or your Secretary of Defense for each of these cabinet members you choose to replace. Reduce your cabinet effectiveness by 1. Draw 3 potential candidates and choose one, and then put the original cabinet member as well as unselected back into the cup. This is really nice. It spells it out 100%. During setup, it did not. It doesn't say what to do when you draw your 3, whether you put them back in the cup or not. Leads me to believe that I cheated, that they shouldn't be put in the cup because it's so clear here. But then again, I don't really trust that the rules meant that. You can also choose to replace your VP. If you do, draw 3 potential candidates, choose one, and total the sum of ratings of the chosen replacement and compare it to your existing VP. If the replacement is higher, you get a public approval bonus. If it's lower, you lose one. Then put the original VP back in the cup. This is weird. Other than Trump ditching Mike Pence, ditching a vice president is really rare. Hasn't happened in the period that the game covers. I have a kind of weak vice president, so I might want to replace him simply because of the bonuses at the end rather than anything else. He's okay. You draw a new campaign promise for the cup. If the campaign promise of your first term has not been fulfilled, you return it to the cup first, so you have a chance of drawing it. Again, very specific about that. Really wish that other things were that specific. There are a couple of places where it doesn't say one way or the other, and when I read this, but again, I have the feeling of somebody wrote this section at a different moment and, was more careful than maybe the setup. So I don't really trust that this is evidence to do the setup differently. All counters remain on the map unchanged from where they were in your first turn. The world situation is the same. Keep all cascading crisis cards in the 2 and 3 decks where they were at the end of the first term. They carry over. Then take all the crisis cards remaining in the deck and those in the reshuffle pile, not those that were removed from the game, and shuffle them back with the cards in their respective type that were set aside at the beginning of the game. Then you go through creating the new crisis decks. Do not seed the cascading events. In the unlikely case that you run out of certain types of cards, just add as many as you can, starting from deck 1 through 4, and replace every card you are short with by an event card. Note that you do not skip what you usually skip on turn 1. This is in fact turn 5, and you will have a continuity of government even if you're reorganizing a bit, but for all other purposes, treat turn 1 as turn 5, turn 2 as turn 6, okay, whatever. There are some historical scenarios. I'm hoping to get to these because I'm very interested in how they handle the specifics. Let's keep looking. Performance. Core Sandbox performed at the end of each turn. Public approval. Total the tracks. Public approval, relations with Congress, relation with media, state of the economy, homeland security. Then subtract 1 for each region with a regional alignment of 4 or less, each rogue state counter on the board, each ally with a relationship that's worse than very close, and each peer that has U.S. relations of 2 or less. Now remember, these things have a tendency to go against you. Here it is. Here's the auto victory. Okay. So the guy was right. If at the end of turn 1, or if you're playing normal or harder, treat this result as 30 or 34. Otherwise, you've won a massive victory. Americans revere you as the greatest American president. I don't buy this. Like, I don't like it. But anyway, I will respond. I already responded to the guy saying, I don't think there's an auto victory. No mention of it until I finally get here. You get some benefits if you got a heavy point, a heavy total there. Might be some legacy. But if you end up at a 16 or less, now remember, you're adding your public approval, but it's the value at the top left, which is not very high. So it's not like the 40 or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. You could easily get an auto loss. I don't know. Again, does that mean you get impeached? Seems highly unlikely. So I kind of feel like you should be keeping going, you know, no matter how bad things are. But in order to actually handle things, you feel like that would create a situation in which you would have to reset things. You know, you would be so hated that you would be essentially an ineffectual president for the rest of your term. And then they talk about going back and, you know, where you go at the end of turns and whatnot. If you want to play the re-election, whatever. The historical scenarios we're going to deal with as they stand. When we hit those, we're going to talk about them within the scenario rules and whatever. We have developers at all levels. It seems like a lot of people were involved in this at various levels in the playthrough. We have playtesters listed. We don't have blind testers especially listed here, which I think is kind of a shitty thing. Like, I wish they would divide that up. Most of the people listed here are people so heavily involved in the process, from what I've seen, you know, family members, people who have been mentioned in the credits and whatnot, that they don't feel like blind test leaders. That makes me a little unhappy. There's a fair amount of proofreaders. Given this list of proofreaders, one wonders how as many errors as are in place got through. It's not a huge number, but it's enough where there's ambiguities, where there's issues that I'm kind of disturbed. But a straight proofreading probably can't find all of that. You really have to do what I did with comparing and looking through stuff to comb through, which is almost, you know, a playtest type experience, right? It's almost that blind test experience is, can you figure the game out from, you know, what's present, and can you call out issues? You know, very obvious to me, nobody did this and came back with, yeah, you know, I don't know, somebody might, you know, contradict me. This is working just fine for some people, but it's not good enough for me. You know, I need to have some instructions on how to read the rules if that's what I'm going to do to get ready for it. And I would say for that, that is read the How to Play booklet, read this, then go to the game manual, read that. It may not all stick. You're going to have to reference it. There's no question. Look over things like this, maybe, and look at the presidential briefing. I think this is more important than the presidential briefing. I haven't gone through all of it. We're going to work through these through playing, because I can do that. I know from my coin games and whatnot, kind of looking over the menus doesn't really help me. I do have to do those in context of the game, in context of what am I trying to do. Anyhow, I am still excited about the game. I'm a little fatigued by going through everything, as I often am when I have to do the full rules reading situation. But I feel like that has improved my ability to absorb games a fair amount. And at this point, just with the flow of games that I'm looking at, I'm finding that I have to do it. It's not like back when I was reading just, a couple of new rules and then going to old games that I'm really, really familiar with. This has a lot of new concepts. It's pretty hefty on that side. So I do feel like it's a good exercise to go through these. I don't know how useful it is to play to people who are watching. I know it's not the way to learn the game. You don't want to watch my intro videos to learn the game. A couple of people do that, but I think that's a horrible idea. But it does let me really kind of analyze and try to find where there are problems as well. All right, let's send this up. And I'm about dead on my feet at this point because although I didn't get up all that early, to be honest, I don't know. I was up for a good part of the day and I didn't sleep. I got up around 11 or so. It's Monday. Wow. Fuck. Okay.